This gentleman here to my right here, this guy with the sunglasses, this is the incredible Bubbleman, and he's responsible. Oh my goodness. Bubbleman, I'll tell you, you're a legend. Anyway, here's the thing, Fresh Hennies. He's got the Bubble Now XL, he's got bubble bag kits. This guy is the master of the bubble. Alright? It's not Bubble Boy, this is Bubble Man. Alright? So everybody's have a warm hand for the legend himself, Bubbleman, and Tony from River Rock in Denver, Colorado. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. It's been a bit of a chaotic cup with the government pushing us out here and there and just trying to mess with us. But I'm happy to see that High Times pulled it off, and we still have a venue thanks to the Milk Vag. I know we've been coming here for, geez, years, like maybe 20 years or more for myself. I wanted to introduce Tony here, who I've got, they mentioned from River Rock. He's also from United Cannabis. And I guess I was going to kind of start this particular talk about a little bit about what we've been doing, how Tony and I are connected. We're both obvious resin aficionados. He's been, well, you've been making water hash and growing herb and doing all these things for the last 15 plus years, I would say, Tony?
Yeah, I started in 96.
96, okay, so you're about 18 years in, so that's great. I started a similar amount of time. I was 92, 93, started growing cannabis. Got into cannabis activism in 93, 94, 95, and that's when we were applying for hemp licenses in Manitoba. Got hemp growing there legally for the first time in 73 years. It's been growing ever since. I think one of my old partners, Alex, might be in the room from Manitoba Harvest and Fresh Hemp Foods. And from there, you know, got into the hash game in the late 90s. So I guess where we're coming from is, recently we started a project. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard there's all sorts of different things happening in the world. Tony himself is a part of a very big project called United Cannabis. And United Cannabis has licenses all over North America and in Canada, and have applied for in Jamaica, which is really what brought Tony and I together. Working together was a project that we started in Jamaica. A company that I started with my Jamaican partners, as well as Johnny B, John Burfello, who may also be in the room here somewhere. I'm not sure if he is. Right on, Johnny B. So we started this company in Jamaica, and we partnered up with United Cannabis, who Tony is a big part of. We also have Ernie Blackman from United Cannabis and River Rock Wellness Center in the room today as well. I'm not sure where exactly he is, but he's here as well. And what this project is, I mean, I'll let you tell a little bit about United Cannabis, and then we'll bring into the Jamaican project.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring it always back to the resin, because I think it's important. And as Robert Clark explained, even up until a year ago, your eyes open when you start to explore the different varieties of cannabis and its forms, which also represent the variety of resin and the type of profile that you're going to get from it. So a lot of people, I think, look at bubble bags and they look at different screens and different things and think that's going to make it, that's the winning ticket, that's the magic of how to make the resin or the medicine exceptional. And really it's a relationship with the genetics, the resin, the cultivation, the extraction process, and then ultimately what are you doing with it. So as far as most societies and cultures, they think of the pot leaf and they think of cannabis and they think of, okay, that's for the stoner community. We can't possibly have those people in our town. So that's kind of where it always starts. And now with hemp and medical cannabis pushing hard into states and countries, I think the governments are slowly starting to realize that, wow, there is maybe some medical benefits here. And so those avenues are now being pushed open, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's freeing the plant, freeing the resin, so that we can explore it in its full capacity. So the social acceptance and responsibility of cannabis to be used publicly should be legalized. The medical avenues of cannabis should be explored to its fullest with all science and research, as well as the industrial uses of hemp. And that could be restore farming back in the United States and provide limitless jobs. And so the idea of what we were trying to do with just the simple starting up of River Rock, which is a medical center and also a recreational center in Colorado, was finding a way to synergize the phytotherapeutics of the plant and the cannabinoid profiles into standardized resin. And so you have to figure out where to start when you think about standardizing resin for medicinal purposes and what that actually means. And so you can kind of explain that part, and then we'll jump back in.
While Tony was doing this with River Rock, Tony and Ernie, while they were mastering the growing aspect and the business aspect of dealing with all these different people, it's very difficult, particularly when running a dispensary, to deal with the patients. They have difficulty in their life, they're in trials and tribulations, they've got health problems, so just dealing with them alone is a big deal. So while these guys were doing that work, I, of course, have been spending the last 15 years learning about isolating and decontaminating resin glands of a particular variety. Capitate stalked and sessile stalked are the two that I prefer, bulbous being a lower quality gland that tends to make up a lot of the extra weight in oil extractions, but doesn't have as much of an important factor, at least in the recreational and what I would call the extreme medical, whereas you have a serious ailment, you're in stage 3 or 4, and you're going to need serious saturation of cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids into your endocannabinoid system. Not to say that there's no medicinal value in bulbous trichomes. I'm sure once we get into the actual studying of specific types of glands and learning where these cannabinoids exist in the different glands, that we'll be able to do specific work breeding and whatnot. But basically, I came in as the sort of decontaminate, the quality that I've set has really led me into the team that these guys are building, which is the United Cannabis. It's really a beautiful thing to see unity in the cannabis industry and to see a standard set. So it's not about who you are, or it's basically really all about what you know and what standard you can set. So if you're a breeder of exceptional talent, or a grower with exceptional talent, or a processor, then you're probably going to find yourself, with a position in United Cannabis one day, because it really is this incredibly large, growing company that has a really incredible foundation, which is to produce the utmost quality of medicine, to extract and process to the purest form, and to give access to all of the different people who have a necessity for cannabis. I get spoken to on a daily basis with people who are sick, and I mean, nothing compared to Tony. I know River Rock sees over 100,000 people annually. So that's a big part of what River Rock brought to the table with United Cannabis, is that they brought this incredible empirical evidence, this sort of data that's coming right from the patients. And I'll let Tony talk a little bit about that, because they created a program so that information would not be lost, but so that information could be accessed in a new interesting type of way that allows for more knowledge to be gained.
Yeah. It started, everyone starts by saying, hey, try this strain, this will be really good for your Crohn's, or try this hash, this will be really good for your back. And then you look at the research and you start to study what's called cannabis pharmacokinetics, and you start to look at how long does active THC, active CBD stay in your liver, stay in your brain, how long does that take to process. And there's a lot of really new, interesting books and literature that's come about. More publications are coming out. And so there's two fundamentals that we really focused on, which was microdosing and the stacking method. And some of you know the stacking method when you think of Rick Simpson oil. And a lot of people have been exposed to Gupta and his entourage effect. We like to call it the full spectrum effect. So you think of whole plant, full spectrum, full terpene restoration type of medicine that can be delivered in inactive and active microdosing, as well as stacking methods. What makes our system a little bit different is kind of like the bags. We separated cannabis high-rich CBD strains and high THC with high terpene profile strains into 4 categories. Those categories are simple: 1, 2, 3, 4, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and bedtime. And each one of those categories represents different types of whole plant medicine, in the sense that a P1 is all whole plant THCA with terpene profiles that match those particular strains. So if you're looking to breed high THC with something that you found in the research that would create pain relief, anti-inflammatory, energy, increased appetite, then you would use those terpenes as modulators. And so the extraction process of trying to get where people were at probably 2 years and before was simply just taking water hash, or taking their hash oil, combining with coconut oil, and trying to create a simple delivery system, because most of us don't want to use alcohols or solvents or chemicals in the medicine and process. And so ideally what we're talking about, because it sounds kind of confusing I'm sure out there, is allowing to take a whole plant and its medicinal properties and categorizing them. So a category 1 P1 would be high THC with certain terpene profiles. A category 2 would be high CBDA, low THCA with certain terpene profiles. A category 3 would be the close ratios, and a category 4 would be fully activated CBD, fully activated CBN, creating a 1-to-1. Those four categories allows patients and physicians to sequence full spectrum cannabinoid therapies for any ailment. So no longer is it a strain, you can dial in the type of combinations. As an example, autism might take an active P2, 2 milligrams for breakfast and for lunch, and an active P4 for dinner. 6 milligrams changes a person's life for $1.30. Instead of trying to concentrate 70 milligrams of a flower or 250 milligrams into a piece of hash to then smoke it, because then it's one-dimensional type of cannabinoid and one type of delivery system. So between the microdosing and the capsules and the categories, we've basically created a way to allow physicians and patients to use cannabinoids similar to music notes.
Absolutely. You get the work that you guys have done, and if Tony's confusing a few of you guys, I'll just give you a really brief lowdown on what he's talking about. When he's talking pure plant profile, he's talking about the resin off of the plant that produces the medicines, so the glandular trichomes, whether they've been extracted via water hash, via trichome heavy extracts that do a lot of the work for them in Colorado, or whether it's been dry sifted, or even whether it's been hydrocarbon extracted by Giddy with Emotech. They take those resins and then they break them down. They know the exact amounts per milligram per pill, and the pill should really be called capsules, because all they really are capsules filled with coconut oil, and I believe you use palm oil as well.
Well, so coconut oil causes problems because there's actually patients out there that are allergic to coconut oil. And so when you start to see thousands of patients and you start having people come back with burning sensations down their throat because they took coconut oil pills, and it's not going to work. So we brought on a medical advisor that discovered stem cells in 1988 and is one of the leading cancer and tumor research scientists on the planet. He has 200 peer-reviewed articles and developed what's called patient avatars. So he's actually created what's called Cancernum, 5 natural plant-based herbs that have been put together to create a synergistic effect to fight cancer in tumors in children. And so his patient avatar work actually removes the stem cells out of the patient while being treated with chemo or radiation, and then using natural supplements and specialized types of foods to bring back that system, get them through the chemo and the radiation, then reinstall all those stem cells. They have the technology to recreate that in rodent studies. And so what we're able to do now is extrapolate cancer patients, autoimmune, autism, epilepsy, MS, fibromyalgia, and recreate those in patient avatar simulators and be able to dial in those particular categories. So instead of chasing the holy grail, or chasing that strain, or chasing that one CBD oil, now this has been put into a software that physicians can understand. It's simple for patients to understand, because once you create the bridge between the two and allow the two best delivery methods for this type of medicine and the flexibility, then you could dial in any condition, and you could do it very effectively and not cost yourself a lot of money. And that's really been the big thing with it.
Yeah, I guess I'll also go back to a little bit of an explanation, because I guess we're assuming a lot here. We all have a system in our bodies called the endocannabinoid system. And this system regulates much of the biological function that goes on in our body, including when we go to sleep and when we wake up and when we have to go to the bathroom and when we get hungry and how well we remember. And so how it does that is it regulates our immune system and our central nervous system, and it puts them into harmony. So when we are in disharmony with those two systems, it usually means that our endocannabinoid system is deficient. And to give you an idea of the importance of cannabinoids, breast milk in women produces essential amino acids, which are basically the building blocks of life. And when you ask your doctor why that is, they don't usually know, but those amino acids actually produce endocannabinoids inside your body. So the endo meaning endogenously inside of you, and then cannabinoids. Cannabis produces what are called phytocannabinoids, and so we can use those, not necessarily as well as the smoking and vaporizing aspect. That's great for tremors, and it's great for ocular pressure, and it's great for increasing appetite. But what Tony's talking about for a lot of these different ailments, the importance is to eat and consume orally, or use creams, or use these drops, and get these cannabinoids into your system so they can do the work that they do, which is basically find the CB1 and CB2 receptors that are found in your brain and in your peripheral organs. And what, by basically, I use the metaphor that a lot of us are blown away. We think it's amazing when Dr. William Courtney gave that young little baby girl, 8 months old, she had the brain tumor in her head, splitting the hemispheres of her brain, and he started giving her the cannabis oil, phytocannabinoids. And of course, her tumor shrunk like miraculously. And Tony has literally dozens and dozens and maybe hundreds and hundreds of these stories of people with bone cancer and metastatic breast cancer and people with autism that have never led a normal life. And one time after another, it's always the same thing, isn't it, Tony? It's a miracle.
Yeah, so once you start databasing those results, that's what drove us. That's literally what drove us to Unite Cannabis, and then it was kind of our fiduciary duty, if you will, to bring that information to light. And it started with rubs, it started with tinctures, it started with strains, and now it's literally sublingual drops and capsules in what I call bionutrient. So most people that are terminal, or people that are having to rely on medicine, also rely on their medicine as a food. And so bionutrient medicinals. And so we were talking about coconut oil before, and coconut oil is okay, it's pretty good. We used a proprietary blend between coconut palms, as well as polarizing that, and then utilizing natural terpene extractions to then be able to pull, whether it's live resin or the different bags, into that plant fat. So that's kind of the newer thing.
I like the way you just held up the pure vial of terpenes like it was nothing. This is some pretty cutting-edge stuff right here. It's been only in the last year that we've been reading about Kay from Trichome Technologies.
You could smell it later too.
Yeah, we'll definitely let you do a smell of this. This is Tony's own creation. I was actually speaking with Kay months ago, and he was telling me, you got to figure out terpene extraction. This is going to be the big thing. You got to figure out how to get it back out of the water. Of course, I make a lot of water hash. And that water hash, of course, is losing water-soluble terpenes. It's losing terpenes. And now, I remember Jim Frere saying on the Adam Dunn show recently, he must be a chemist, he's definitely a very intelligent man, but he was saying that the water can't breach the wax membrane. But I disagree. I think that once the head breaks off and it breaks away from the capitate stalk, that thin membrane underneath the head is allowing terpenes to be released into the water, as well as water being absorbed into the wax membrane. And this is why we all know, any one of us that have made water hash, that really the most difficult thing in making water hash is actually drying the final product. The water and the ice gets all the credit, I'm sorry. It's doing all the work, it's isolating the resin, it's decontaminating everything for you at 99%. So please give the water and the ice some credit. And after that, it's really like what I think the extract artist is the guy who really knows how to control his variables and to get that hash properly dried.
Yeah.
So what Tony's done with those water-soluble terpenes is he's figured out a way to extract them in a pure form.
So a lot of people that follow me try to wonder, like, what am I doing with terpenes? So the fun side of that is obviously response. So if you reintroduce that into a full melt or a live resin or anything else like that, they act as modulators, and we've known that from people like Robert Clark and Dave Watson, people that talked before us. They act as modulators, and so these things that we see as terpenes and we look at them as flavors and smells, they actually are catalysts for THC as well as all the other cannabinoids. So now there's the Da Vinci Code goes a little deeper, or the Rubik's Code goes a little deeper when you start looking at species across the world, resin, genetics, terpene profiles that then lock and key with cannabinoids, and then those get delivered to either the central nervous system or the immune system, those two deliveries.
Excellent. I guess leading into the water extraction and losing of the water solubles has also led me over the years, of course, being mentored by guys like Rob Clark and the Skunk Man. I've been led into the wonderful world of dry sift, as many of you know. I've been sharing techniques that I'm available to, that I'm able to. I've learned a few new tricks over the years and have been just sharing with people the simple aspect of having a quiver. If you're a hash maker and you think of each arrow that's in your quiver as one of your techniques or one of your methods, to me, the more arrows, the better. And so dry sifting is it's the holy grail, in my opinion. And before you're making your oil, before you're making your wet wash, it's never a bad idea to look into a little dry sifting. It's different. It's not based on a prohibition-based model in this day and age, the same way as cutting your herb fresh, drying it and selling it. How much can I get and how fast can I get it? It's really more of an intimate relationship with the plant, that you can grow the plant yourself, you can hang it, you can practice hanging it for different amounts of times, and you'll learn in this amazing way that, oh wow, the plant releases resin differently depending on how I just cure it. So dry sifting is really not a misnomer. The word dry is very important. The dry ice, of course, has sort of confused that. A lot of people now make dry sift using dry ice, which I think is, it definitely works, it's doable, but you run into a couple of variables that are going to be problematic, which is A, cleaning the hash, dry resin glands, and I wish I had photos. You guys can, maybe you do already, but you can check me out on BC Bubbleman on Instagram, and all the photos are there, all the resin gland photos. And if you see my resin gland photos when they're living on the plant, they're very bulbous and they look like a water balloon ready to burst, as opposed to when the plant's been dried properly. The resin shrinks like a raisin, and it really is much easier to work with. Whether you're carding, whether you're doing the two-screen trick that I've been sharing for the last maybe 6 months. I learned from a guy online, but he became such an incredible douchebag, I can't even give him a shout out on it, so that's unfortunate. I do like to give credit where it is due, but I won't give him credit. So this guy came up with a really cool idea, and I will share it with you guys. It's a dry sift concept, and it's two screens that are much larger than your average size dry sift screens. Most of you that do sift, maybe you know, 150, 160, 180 micron is a pretty big screen. I know there's a company out there called Ape Extractors or something, and they sell a tumbler with a 200 micron screen. I think that's incredibly large for dry sifting, but most use about a 150. So this trick uses a 250 micron and a 180 micron. And I figure while we're up here talking about all this crazy stuff, I should at least give you a couple of hash tips. So here's one for you. The 250 and the 180, I sell them both. You can buy them both anywhere as a silk screener, but you won't be able to order them in micron. Silk is measured in lines per inch or mesh. So if you want those two screens, you're going to ask for a 90 mesh and a 60 mesh. And you're going to be a little confused because the 60 is going to go on top of the 90. Okay, these are counterintuitive numbers. Micron is the size of the hole, Mesh and lines per inch are just that. They are how many lines of silk you can get in 1 inch. And so it's not based on the diameter of the hole. Counterintuitive numbers. The bigger the number is for microns, the smaller the number is for lines per inch. So really remember that. 60 lines per inch screen, which is the 250 micron, goes on top, and it sits like a dish. So the sides of the frame are going up. And you put that on top of your 90 LPI, which is a 180. But instead of keeping it the right way, you flip it upside down. So now the screen is flush and there's no edges. It's just the screens that I sell, or any silk screen, you flip that one upside down on the bottom, put 4 spacers on the corner, and set the other 60 lines per inch screen, the 250 micron. I'll keep repeating both numbers because it's totally confusing. You put it on top. Now, the way this process works is there's about a 1/4 inch space between the 2 screens. And what happens is when you throw material down, whether it be sift or plant matter, the way the resin falls is the gland heads fall like stones straight through. Because the screens are so big, they don't really get caught up on anything. So they just fall straight through. Now, the capitate stalks, the cystolith hairs, and the stigmas, and any really other smaller components of contaminant, they fall like this. And they do this little thing, and when they hit the second screen, because they're doing this, they usually stick right into it. It's quite something to lift the first screen, and if you get down on the table and you look even with it, it's just trees of contaminant. It's unbelievable, and if you touch it like that, you just dropped 50% of that contaminant through. So it is super ultra delicate. So you're not working the material. You're literally throwing material down, lifting both screens very gently, and on the bottom, you're basically being left with what I would call between, the first time you do it, you'll do it wrong, so you'll get like 80% heads. But if you start learning that it's totally counterintuitive to how much can I get and how fast can I get it. So you want to go slow, and you don't want to try to get a lot, because the whole process is to get, what we've been talking about, that standardization of medicine. And for 15 years as a hash maker and a cannabis grower, I've really been led, and it offends some people. I love the cannabis plant. I just don't look at the bud as something that I use other than to make hash. That's what I do with it. It's a carrier that brings me the ability to produce a raw product that is of extreme medicinal value. And I can do that with cannabis on a multitude of levels. I can extract the heavy amino acid rich seed oil if I want to acquire that from the seeds. I can acquire the fiber from the stalk if I want to make clothing or textile products. I can even extract the cellulose from inside the stalk. And if you notice, what all those things have in common is you never use them all. You only take the one from the whole, always with cannabis. One from the whole, one from the whole. I use my pizza box analogy. When I order a pizza, I generally like to open the box and take the pizza out and eat it. So I do respect cannabis. I love the plant, and we couldn't get the resin or the fiber or the cellulose or the essential amino acids without it. But I really do see it as a plant that is, particularly the medicinal components, are things that we can extract. And the more we decontaminate them, which is what this guy's all about, the more we seem to learn. And it's why guys like us are really, at this point in time, on the edge of this information that we've been learning about for, 25 years. These guys, Rob and Skunkman, and the variety of these guys that have been doing this for 40 plus years, keep in mind, they really did know most of what we know today. Really, the new information that you should be sinking your teeth into is learning about as much about your endocannabinoid system as you can learn, because once you learn about that, you can then share with all the people. I can't even imagine how many people, all these people in this room know combined, that are dying of cancer right now. Just one disease. And we all know more people that are suffering from other things. So if we can learn about this, if we can extract these resins, if we can learn about terpene modulation, if we can learn about endocannabinoid saturation through programs like the Act Now and through these legal models. We've been stuck in a prohibition model for so long, and right now we're in a situation where I see a lot of people. I see the activists that I grew up with and came up in this. Some of them are sort of looking into this new, I don't know if I'd call it a corporate model, but it's a legal model. It's a model that is not based on a profit margin. It's based on you or me going to jail. Okay? The profit margin that we have been making off of cannabis for the last however many decades has been based on prohibition. It's been based on people going to jail. That's a terrible dollar. That's not a good market. So I think if we can take these products and bring them into a new model, a model that is not a prohibition model, one that doesn't, I support dispensaries. I support every single person being able to grow for themselves, having a license, being able to even trade or potentially sell it within their community. I also support, companies doing it on a large level with standardizations that are able to produce medicine for more than just at one coffee shop or more than just 5 dispensaries. It's a big world out there. There's 7 billion people, and we all have endocannabinoid systems. Anything you want to add, Tony?
That was long. That's okay. Wow, there was a lot there. So I look at cannabis kind of like bananas, and it's like if we took bananas off this planet, what would happen to the human on Earth? And we've seen that even growing up as a kid. They said, look how good bananas are. If we take bananas out of society, everybody loses protein, phosphorus, the whole world changes, and we just die from bananas. Well, that's kind of what cannabis is to me. Cannabis is a food. It's a medicinal herb. It's a medicinal food. It's something that your body has to have. It's preventative, it's management, and in the future it'll be regenerative. So when people are coming up to you when you're an old person and saying, okay, your insurance program shows that I can replace your liver, we're just going to print one out for you. We're going to slap it in there. You're about 75, so we'll give you about 80 minutes to recover. And if you don't have a properly functioning endocannabinoid system or the serums in that organ, it may not take. There's going to be all kinds of crazy new future things by the time I'm 80 years old. I'm 37 in January. So I try to look at things in the future and say, how can we lay out a map? How can we lay out these things? And I think this was a good start. Like I said, I'm going to bring it back to the resin for you every time.
Perfect.
And the bags are a good start because it's the first eye-opener. We went from taking grinded bud and putting it into a glass of water with ice and watching the little heads fall.
So do Sam.
And then we went to a couple screens. We went to clay bowls. We've had centuries of beating dried, aged bud down and resin down into keef, Morocco, all these different hashes and things. And then you get into isolator bags and bubble bags, and then you say, okay, well, I've gone from 2 screens, 3 screens, 4 screens, 5 screens. What do those screens really mean? And I think that's really important to understand that, because a lot of hash makers just get material and then they go. And then they have these results and they go, wow, this one's really terpy. This one's really greasy. Mm-hmm. This one feels really strong. Oh, I tested 70% with this one. But if you were growing for your bags, or you were growing your resin for a specific purpose, you pay a little bit more attention before you would start processing.
Different attention.
You pay a lot different attention. So you would start from the very beginning, and you'd use the little eyepiece, and you'd watch the little resin heads, and you'd watch how many gather together. And if there's not a topside party with little resin heads, and they're not huge, like you were talking about, there's probably a problem. And we went to Jamaica, and we looked at tons of different bud. I washed bags with you, and literally looked at the 90 bag as if it was just pulled out of a brand new set.
I couldn't believe it, actually. When I saw that, I looked at the bag with the scope, because I thought,
there's gotta be something.
We're pretty on it. We don't print the wrong bags on the wrong screens. It's like we've got that down, but I still just couldn't believe it. I thought this has to be like a 160 bag or something.
It was 3 days of harvesting ice, first of all, to get ice in Jamaica. So he was surprised that I actually even was able to produce ice in the middle of mountains, nowhere. I was like, yeah, I got ice. I've been working on the ice situation. John was helping, everybody was helping.
Over there.
Had a 5-gallon bucket. We had everything right except the resin.
Except the resin.
The resin itself wasn't that good. And when you looked at it, you looked at it under the scope, first thing we said was, oh, did you guys have a drought? And was this a sativa that got droughted? So if you look at a sativa that's supposed to be a long cycle and it's supposed to be outside for a long time, and you watch how the trichome head develops, and you watch it go clear, and you're looking at day 70, 80, 90, those are really important. If you have a drought halfway through it and your head's never developed, well, now all of a sudden you got these little tiny skinny stalks and these little shrunken down heads that never even developed into a head. It's just little stalks.
No, we did see that, absolutely. It was surprising. Just to give you a little background on the history, as we mentioned Sadhu Sam, it was the first thing that I've ever seen mentioned about water extraction was in 1988 in the High Times magazine. Sadhu Sam took out the ad, and it was Sadhu Sam's water extraction secret, and it was basically the jar method. So that was the first time we'd really heard about water extraction. In 1997, a gentleman by the name of Reinhard Delp came to Amsterdam, and he brought a machine with him called the ice-cold extractor. And the ice-cold extractor was sold to Mila. Mila, the pollinator lady, had the ice-cold extractor. And sitting on her couch one day, Eldon, R.I.P. Eldon, we miss you. He's been passed away a few years now. Old school hashishin. And my manufacturer, Mark Rose, were sitting on the couch looking at this machine and decided to, Eldon shouted out, 2 nylon bags with screen bottoms and a 5-gallon bucket, you got the same idea. So this is the birth of the isolator bags. About a year later, I came out with the bubble bags. And that was 1999, so from 97 we had, well, from 88 we had Sadhu Sam. We had a long lapse. People didn't get it. They just didn't pick up what he was doing. Reinhardt's machine, people kind of lifted their eyebrows a little bit, but the bags were brilliant. You know, Eldon coming up with the bag idea, and Mark Rose naming them right there, and Mila being the pollinator lady and bringing them to the world and selling them. It was really that team of people that made that's what I saw. That's how I came along to make bubble bags. And you know, we came out with the first 3-screen system. We came out with the first 4-screen system, the first 5, the first 6, the first 7, and the first 8. And I got to give it up to my boy Jason from Payload Bags, because he has the only 9-bag system. He got the first one and the only one. So he's a part of it too. This is the history. You can read about it on the internet. There's all sorts of different water hash companies now. I only bring up the history because recently, after 8 years of being litigated by Reinhardt, who does indeed have a patent for water extraction, I finally just, you know, started talking to him like a human being, and we ended up making a deal, and I've now just paid for all 15 years that I've sold bubble bags. They've been leased under patent, and our company is now selling bags. It's good to sort of give those, you know, who have a position, it's good that they earn what they should earn. So bubble bags is now a patented leased product, and it's just, you know, there's a little bit of water hash history for you.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about, because I don't think everyone in the room understands the different bag terminology. And so let's say somebody grew their cannabis plants correctly, and they had a OG Kush or OG Kush dominant. Nice. What bags would you say you would see more collection of the heads, and why in those variations? I think it's important. Well,
in a surprise with the OGs, you're going to see resin that melts in the 160 bag. If you've grown it properly, you'll have these big fat 160 heads that you can catch, and that's the red bag. That's 3 bags down, and that's really the reason I have the 190 bag. A lot of people ask me, why do I need a 160 if I have a 190, or vice versa? And I usually say, well, because if you grow your weed really properly and you're growing these indica dominant strains indoor under HPS lights, that you're going to produce these really, really fat heads, and that it's nice to have 160 full mount. I wouldn't say by any means it's my favorite, but I certainly would never throw away my 160 bag, because the 120 bag for sure on the OG is going to be straight fire, and it's going to be all the way down through 90 and 73. 45 and the 25 will melt as well, but on the OGs it just won't be the same quality as between like 120 and 73, and that's really based on the size of the head. So when I first released all these bags, if you can imagine, many people thought that I was just trying to sell bags, that I was adding bags because it was adding money, and the more money that people spent, the more sales I made. And it really couldn't be further from the truth. We tested, Mark Rose and I, my manufacturer, he helped me out an enormous amount. We tested so many of these bags. He lives in Kathmandu, Nepal, so he has no shortage of landrace strains to pull off the back mountain and run through the bags. I'm in BC. If you've ever seen my YouTube channel, you definitely know I have no shortage of strains to run through the bags. So between, you know, that was really the work that Mark and I did, was finding the right size bags. It's not like we just picked random numbers, although I will say that the yellow 73 bag could have easily been a 70, but I was born in 1973, so I thought that I would throw my year in there for...
But a lot of people didn't know that.
A lot of people don't know that, and that was before the 90 bag, so imagine, if you understand water hash, the 90 and the 73 are almost always the best, regardless of strain. Unless you're growing a tropical, exotic grown landrace sativa in Australia somewhere under the super hot sun, then
what bag would you want?
the heads, like I'm telling you, the 25 and the 45. And where I base that on is I used to have a good friend named the Mullumbimby Madman. He was from Overgrow days. And he was living in Mullumbimby in Australia, and his father was part of the group that bred up, I don't know if you could call it bred. It's a mix mash of strains, exotic sativas, landrace sativas that these old guys saw in the 70s and the 80s in Australia, and they bred them all together. And I'm telling you, I've seen pictures of 15+ pound plants, 15 feet tall and 18 to 20 feet wide. And the crazy bastard used to send me his bud and his hash. So it was in fact at Breeder Steve's wedding, one of the last joints I ever smoked. It's got to be 14 years ago now. I smoked a joint of the Mullumbimby Madness with Steve right before he got married on the beach in Sauble Beach. But the water hash that he sent was completely unique and exotic, and just looking at it right away you knew it was special. It had tinges of red, it had the spiciest, most exotic flavors, and it was 25 micron. Now keep in mind, 25 micron, when I came out with that bag, well-known hash smokers laughed at me. They said that is a ridiculous bag, that is immature and broken heads, and you are absolutely, it is proof that you do not know what you're doing by adding that bag. I'm telling you, I got a lot of flack for it. And it was years before those same companies copied me and put a 25 micron bag in their kits. So don't diss on the 25, particularly if you live in a tropical region, and even if you don't. I've heard people pulling out fire from their indoor crops.
Yeah, the 25 and the 45. If you know Jibs, he'll, especially like with the banner, we talk about the 120, the 90, the 73, and then the banner is just, the 45 melts just as good. It has, in my opinion, it has a little bit more flavor, has more flavor from the plant. And then our test is kind of like if you ever had a music studio, that was my past career, but we used to have these little Yamahas that would sit up. So we had these badass huge speakers, we had all this really good gear, and then when you go to master, you put these little cheap Yamahas on. And so you listen to the music, and if you could hear every little thing in those flat, cheap Yamaha speakers, then you knew the actual mastering of the entire album was correct. Right. So when you pull the 25 bag, if the 25 bag is full melt, then you know you got something.
I mean, pretty much that's a guarantee. If your 25 micron bag is melting, you're going to have nice hash throughout the bags for sure. So, I don't know. I think we pretty much...
We were going to talk about the future.
Well, the future. Well, the future is what's in your hand right there.
The future is... it's interesting because I think every year that... and I think it's important that you guys also look at the Cannabis Cup as not a competition of who's got the best situation right now. I think it's good and healthy to have the competitions, but out of all the people that I know and the friends that I know in the industry, every single person in this competition and at high times on the flowers, the concentrates, and the full melt, everybody's bringing fire these days.
Yeah.
Everybody has stepped their game up to an ultimate level, and now it's like, okay, if I was a judge, I'd have to be going off on preferences, and now you start nitpicking. Well, did it tickle my throat just a little bit? I'm gonna have to make a note. It's like,
it's literally what it's called.
It's nitpicking down to such a little bit. And I think people put so much emphasis on like who's going to be the first, second, or third place, and really what it comes down to is this. So this is like a snow-in. So it didn't happen in Amsterdam. There wasn't an expo, but there's still a community. There's still a gathering. There's still this. This is the reason why we come together, to be able to network with everybody, to be able to see those faces that we see on Instagram or Facebook and say, oh, I wanted to try the terp melon, I want to try this dry sift. And so it's about inspiring each other and inspiration, and that's what's going to lead to the future. So if somebody puts something out and they say, okay, we've got terpenes now, well, it's important to understand with any information that's out there, you have to be responsible with that information. So now it's the next chapter. Well, just like we had live resin, we had BHO, we had shatter. Who's making it? What machine was processing it? You know, is it closed loop? Where did the trim come from? Everybody's got those questions. Now you should have the same for the next with the terpenes. Where are the terpenes coming from? Are they coming from cannabis material? Are they coming from other fruits and vegetables? Are they coming synthetically? So you have to educate yourself again. And I think that's what this is about. The future is inspiring each other, coming together time and time and time again, not just in Amsterdam, but across the world, and really see what climate, genetics, culture, and people can actually do in the forms of information that inspire them in those pockets around the world.
Absolutely, dude. Pushing it to the new envelope, and I'll tell you, it was wet wash for me. I mean, I started also 16, 17 years ago with oils. My first concentrates, got into water hash, went hard on that, got into dry sift, and now literally Tony taking terpenes and adding them back into both the dry sift and the wet wash. The modulating effects, the zestiness that comes with the hit, it's really definitely it's going to be in the quiver, there's no doubt about it. There may be people that dislike it and fight it, but I'll tell you, when we walk around, right after we're done here, don't leave, because we're going to walk around with these terpenes and we're going to make sure that you smell what a pure extracted terpene
This one's a haze. This one's a good haze, too.
It's such a great flavor. I wish we could give them all dabs of it, but...
Yeah, usually when you see us, we're smoking. So this is kind of new that we don't have a rig.
I have a rig, it's in my suitcase.
We get a lot better information out there when we're not on the rig, though, I think.
I think you're right. I think if we rigged out...
Because I don't really talk that much. I'm just constantly smoking hash.
I was going to start this event by taking like a half-gram dab and then just coughing until I almost threw up for 15 minutes, but I thought that might be awkward. Do it!
We've been doing it secretly.
We have been doing it. And you know what? We're going to see you guys around. If you do come up to us and see us and we've got the rig, don't be shy. We're basically here to share bowls and blaze people down and share information. I know that you know, it's a wide swath that our community has. We've got people, you know, wondering if they're going to win the cup or lose the cup. We've got companies that are trying to sell their products. We've got people that are just here to learn information, and you know, then we have people who are literally here to learn about the endocannabinoid system and how it can help save either their life or a person that they love dearly. So I'd leave you guys with, check out the endocannabinoid system group on Facebook if you guys have information to share or if you want to learn more about your endocannabinoid system. You guys can check out River Rock TV on YouTube. You can check out United Cannabis is at unitedcannabis.us.
You could just do United Cannabis US Act Now, and it breaks down all
Right,
that
Act
too.
Now, yeah, you can check that out. And then I'm
Project CBD is good too.
Bubbleman's World on
Project
YouTube.
CBD.
You guys can check me out, and yeah, if you guys see me out there, please come up to me. I'd love to talk to any of you guys if you have any questions. And if you have any questions for either me or Tony now, feel free to ask away. Open to you. You can come up. You can come up and even use the mic if you want, unless they have one.
And I'm sorry if I passed out. If any of us hung out and I passed out this last week, I'm sorry. It's from the terps and the hash. I've at least passed out 4 times a day.
Thanks, Tony. We're going to move on. We're going to start setting up for tonight. We have to do sound check with the bands and so forth. So right now, setup time. Get out to the coffee shops. There are a lot right in this area. Good restaurants all around here. And very, very reasonable restaurants. All kinds of different foods. So once again, 9:30, about 9 o'clock, the concert gets started. But sure, the doors open before that. Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much.